Okay, hopefully we're live for the latest edition of the LEIT Data Value Show. We've been out for a few weeks. Holidays, conferences, and travel have given us a bit of a gap. But we're back today with Nicolas Averseng. I hope I pronounced that correctly. There we go. Welcome to stage. Hi Nicolas. So I always like try and start with a bit of an intro. As most people know that watch the show, we normally have I normally have spoken or we've had some interaction in the past, so we don't have to have these as very much prescribed events. So we know that we have general alignment of our conversation, and it's hopefully been insightful. So yeah, I've met Nicolas. I think comments on LinkedIn for a while, but we had the pleasure of meeting each other at Big Data London, where at the final minutes of the show, I think it was, I finally made it to your booth while everyone else is clearing up around us, and you got to share, a little bit more about YOOI. Is that how you correct pronounce it?
Exactly.
Yeah, a bit about what YOOI's doing for its clients, and I thought it'd be great to get you on the show to share one of my favourite subjects, which is business value and why our industry has to be so focused on it to help evidence what we actually achieve. So without further ado, Nicolas, do you want to give yourself an intro and a bit about yourself and the company?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Indeed, it was good to finally meet in person in London, and and have a chance to connect. I think what always was been a good let's say signal for me is that you call the data value show, and our tagline has always been about being value driven. So I feel like there is a natural connection here, and we're maybe not enough in the industry are being really focused on that value angle and so on. So that's why I'm really happy to be here. So quick background: so I'm the founder and CEO of YOOI, company I founded like 5 years ago. I've been hanging around in the software and data industry for 25 years, something now. And helping or working with large organization on how can they adapt data and AI platform, how they can deploy that, how they can and I always say that my as a software engineer initially, my goal always has been on how to make things that people actually use, and not just building software for the sake of building software. So and so that's kind of my I would say obsession almost now, is how to make something like that happen at scale.
I think it's a worthy cause and something that I've been talking or banging on, as people know, about business value. It's sort of like the buzzword that everyone counts how many times I say it. And I think there's people said, why do we have to? People should understand. And I think there's many facets that cause our. Next week I'm talking about the role of the CDO. So I think it's where the positioning is of the decision makers. Or the people championing this, in organisation, for them to enable to achieve these things. But I also think it's a bit of an industry problem. Maybe historically we haven't delivered well. So now because of the reputation of previous projects, programs, big data programs, big data warehouse programs. For whatever reason, the business never actually perceived the value. Maybe it was there, but we weren't able to. And maybe in many cases, they spent a lot of money and they probably didn't get the value. I think the point you made of engineers building things for the sake of it, or your view is you build something you actually need. So, is that something you've seen? Obviously, have you come from the product world of building software products into the data world?
Yeah, exactly. So I initially come from this, let's say, pure software product, working at software companies and so on, and came to the software world. So I would say, and we can talk about that later, that kind of data product, movement and so on is something that is kind of natural for me, because that moving to project to product is something I've been living and working on for quite some time. But to your question, I think that disconnect in terms of value is something we see a lot. I had a quote, and I just can't find the source anymore. But there was a kind of a survey saying 92% of data analytics leaders believe that they deliver value to the organization, and 92% of the business leaders believe that they don't. and and I like this one because it's I don't blame people on having bad intention, obviously, because I believe, but that kind of tendency to build things from the bottom up, and it happened with data lakes, it happened with data platforms, or it happens with even data catalogs or whatever, is like, we're going to build it and then they will come, or we're going to build it, then it will be so much easier and so on. But the way you build it is not built, even those foundations are not built like a product, in saying how we're going to use that, how we're going to make adoption and so on. So I believe the pressure on value comes from the costs, which are significant, and the fact that it's because it's transformation, the expectations are high, and then if the results are not there, and so it raises the tension, basically.
And just a thought that popped into my mind, and we're not here to vendor bash or something like that, but do you think it's a lot of the marketing sort of artifacts or campaigns that are targeted at data leaders, that tell them you need all this technology, you need to buy this, your platform needs to look like this for you to be AI and ML. And as an architect by originally, before moving into more of a sales and marketing role in this organization, I still have that. I can't sell something I think I don't think was what they need. And the presentation I did at Big Data London was, I think I called it force multipliers of how you actually iteratively add value and drive efficiencies in the right order by having a roadmap that is aligned to use cases. I think, which I just a shout out. So 100% John and
exactly.
Val and Ramona. Ramona's actually now given her full name on the thing. I should change her settings because normally I had to check on my phone if it was her. So hey everybody, and 100%. I'll just put that comment on there. Spot on. Is the data teams are too far away from the use cases. I call that it's the chasm of unknown. It's you've got the business one side, you've got the data team, and both not understanding what actually each other, what the requirements are to achieve what the business objectives are. And I do hope that we're starting to close that chasm, but it's still there, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, it's still there. Last, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago, I was chatting with one of our clients, and he just caught a new AI project on the edge of being released to production, and basically, so it was done, basically, and ready to be rolled out, and they discovered that never ever in the course of that project any of the people talked to the actual business users, never. And so they believed there was a need, and they built it for that. And so then they came and did a few interviews saying, oh, we've built that for you. What does it mean for you? Say, oh, that's very interesting. It's really exciting. And we're never going to use it. Say, well, why is that? Because the thing is that it was meant to avoid people on the field, to go and make a visit somewhere, physical visit, because they have all the information they need. But the thing is that they didn't think about the process, and those people have to go on site for plenty of other reasons. So just that is not going to fit anywhere in the operational process. So even if it's interesting, it's just that it's interesting, So that and for me, that's where the product mindset comes. You need to really think about adoption from the beginning. What does it mean for people to adopt that? Not just being useful. It's and I've a long time ago, I was doing a dashboard design, and it's the same. When you do an interview about what do people want to see on the dashboard, they always give you a list of KPIs. Oh, that would be cool to see that, or that would be good to have that. But then if you reverse the question of saying, but what would you do with that information? Actually, it's interesting, and no doubt about that. But so many things are cool. So that, and then hard discussion comes in.
And it's exactly. I'm just about to write a note, but I'm sorry. I'll jump in now. Is that it's that missing join or missing connection to business processes. So having that understanding of what your business process is doing and what data it needs at that point, We talk about data modeling making a comeback, which it is. I think the next level is that now we've got those good data models, we need to be looking at how they join up to our business process, because whatever we do, we need to make an improvement to it. And if we can't improve something that's already defined, well, if we haven't got that thing to measure against that's been defined, there's no way of us ever evidencing the value that we provided, because it's going to be hidden. It's never going to be visible.
Yeah. No, that's and you know, I see someone in the comments saying, "What's the point of building a product that no one is going to use it?" Some LinkedIn user, I think it's Faika.
Yeah, I can see if I can get the name for that one. It's if I pronounce it
Faika.
right, Fake Meboob. So,
and
yeah,
and the problem is today, I think that the latest Gartner prediction or something like that in late 23, basically 75 to 80% of all data and AI investments in organization are never used. Never.
Yeah.
That's I mean, 75%. Just it's a crazy metric, you know. If you think about it, 75% waste. It's pretty bad. I'm not even talking about the number that doesn't go from POC to being in production. It's just that you deploy stuff and no one uses that. So
it's a very another one interesting point is that route to live, and you can build the best algorithm in the world, even on the best data sets that you've been able to get out of, but unless you're able to get that into production, it's going to be no use to anyone at all. In fact, it'll have a negative effect, because all the great work that's been done by that individual, that team, they'll be disheartened. They'll move on to someone else that does. So having the right foundations in place, which probably leads us quite nicely into some of the points that we raised here earlier, is that to have a data strategy, you need to understand which order you need to put these things in, how it fits into the bigger picture, and how you're going to be able to measure the successes that you're achieving. So that's I think is the $1 million question, or the challenge that we have. So how do you see tackling that challenge at the moment?
Yeah, so you touch on very important point. I think the first thing is to have that kind of obsession of knowing what you want to tackle, you know, knowing the objective, and having clear line of sight of what are the use case, how is that going to be used, and so on. And again, that product approach is critical, because you need to engage with the business from the very beginning, you know, and not at the end. It's not sometimes people look at adoption as something at the end, and I always look at adoption as something at the beginning. You know, it's like how do you restart with that, to think about what does it take to go into production and to embed, to, again, you mentioned business process, to live within business processes, and so on and so on. So that's one. And the second thing, which is really important, that's where we talk about the StratOps approach, you know, because I've been a developer, so I've seen the emergence of DevOps and now DataOps and so on. And what did that come from? It came from the fact that historically, like 20 years ago, when we were building software, people were building software, and then you would hand it over to people going to production, you know, and trying to make it operational and so on. It didn't work well. And today, in a way, you have the same principle with some people trying to draft a strategy, you know, like direction where you want to go, and then things happening, but the connection is not there, and the feedback loop is not there, and so on. So the whole thing is, how do you build and maintain that link, you know, between this is what we want, where we want to go, this is how we prioritize, this is what we work on, this is how those things inform, and having those feedback loop, you know, back to the strategy. So really making that can seems a bit let's say theoretical maybe, but really building that connection between where you go and the strategic path with more operational way.
And brilliant. I've just been making some notes as you went through there, and I'll be honest, I'd overlooked that StratOps when you put it out on there. I hadn't quite connected it was strategy operations. I quite like that, and what I was just writing here was, your strategy ops is basically looking at your OKRs for the organization, which are linked to your company objectives, the KPIs to support those OKRs, the projects or products or services that you need to measure actually 2 ways. Actually, you need to measure against those ones, maybe at product level. But the other thing is you need to be able to define an architecture roadmap to build up the foundations that can help deliver that service or that product. I do, yeah. You mentioned, I think I wrote down was that handing over to BAU team. That day that you used to have, your development build it, hand it all over. Those days are gone with the the speed we need to move. But I think what you're saying is that there's been no easy way to actually coordinate all of those activities that may have been more easier to do in the operational world of building an app that's servicing a particular thing. It's quite easily, the value is quite directly associated to it, or it was. I think what may have complicated, well, okay, loosely maybe. We said we disagree on something at least anyway. So maybe what's making that not so, or complicating that is, I think I did there's a post that went out, my good friend George Miguel the other day, which from a conversation we talked about data wrapping. So MIT came up with, the very clever people from MIT came up with three categories for data monetization. I always hate the term monetization because I think we've discussed this. It's not all about the money. Sometimes it's about the value it generates, and that isn't always money. But that aside, they thought it was selling data, improvements with data, and then wrapping with data. And two of them, the first two are probably quite easy to understand. You're selling data, you've aggregated it, you've added some value to it. Your data has some commercial value outside your organization in that format. Quite rare, really. There's not exactly, there's a small enough percentage of companies that have that amount of data or have access to that amount of data that they can actually probably sell in its raw form or in its curated form, should we say.
Yeah.
Maybe there's other ones of aggregators that can go and scrape this stuff, but if it's your own data, your own company, you need to be a large supermarket with a large market share to probably warrant the value that you'd want to get from it. I think improvements is probably well understood, and I think my view is it's probably not very well delivered or executed for some of the reasons we talked about earlier. Is we're not really able to evidence the improvements we made because it's not linked to your business processes. But wrapping was a really interesting one of it creating an additional service like a fraud service or something that is part of your core product. And I think it's, once you've moved into that world, it's very mixed up with your product now. And I think the only way you're dealing with it is that product led approach for delivering it. And now data is just one element of that. Yeah. And I'm hoping, this problem we talked about earlier about the chasm of difference is if the data people are now working in that same product team, the people that actually build the product, that have done all of that validation of customer fit and all the rest of the requirements, maybe we're going to be in a better place to actually deliver this, as well as the C-suite seeing the value that we provide. But by then, we'll just be called the product team.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's always a debate, on what's the future of the CDO role, and should there be a data function at all, or should be part of the digital teams, because any digital application will have some data and some AI parts of that. And but I think that's why I usually try to not think so much, even in terms of monetization, but more in terms of really starting from the business goals, and only thinking about what is the kind of investment that can help, generating the business. So I think basically, what can you do to improve operations? What can you do to improve revenue and incremental value? Or what can you do to have new product and services that you can market as a company? And new market and new products is somewhere where you can have that direct data monetization that you mentioned. Maybe I can just sell my data, and for some companies it has a lot of value. But otherwise, it's really about always having that goal of looking how it can help any of the operational processes, and again, but at the end, it's not just about delivering data, it's about delivering a product, and maybe it has some data in there, and maybe it has some AI in there, and so that divide, about what is data and what is not data is not very useful sometimes, because it's running an end.
I think it's one team. I think if we get to that, maybe we'll get there at some stage. But yeah, so where was I? Don't go there. So if now we're working in this product approach now, where we're seeing that data is intrinsic to that, how are we then able to convince the collectives like C-level to invest in foundations that's going to make that happen? What I've seen is lots of organizations, I've got budget for this project, I got budget for this project, I got budget for this project. All of them, they all want to go at their own pace. They all want to be able to not have cross dependencies, because it slows things down and complicates planning. But no one wants to go and be the first one that goes, right, I know those 3 projects are all going to need some good DataOps foundations. They need some security that's going to be able to apply to all of it. I want to have some certain rules for cataloging. I want to make sure there's a semantic capability for this at the right time. But who's going to pay for this? Because if I take a little bit of money out of all those, I can do it. But no one's going to want me to be able to do that. How do we deal with that challenge from your experience?
That's a great question, and I'm not how to put it. There's 2 things in what you say for me. One is that many times people confuse having an iterative approach and not having vision. And so if you want to have an iterative approach and build step by steps and use case by use case, it doesn't mean that you don't have a good vision for your architecture and your foundations and so on. So that's not one against the other. You need vision, and maybe that vision will refine itself and will adapt on the way and so on. But you need that vision because that's where you go. And then you can iterate towards that goal. That's the first thing. The second one is that if you think about it today, data teams are pretty good at having huge budget to build platforms and foundations that in the end don't deliver value. So should the group level, fund some foundations? Probably it's the case, because it's transformation. It's really hard to take that budget from each and every use case. So that could remain. But the question is more, how do you use that budget to make sure that you build those foundations iteratively in an efficient way and so on? So if you just think about how you spend differently, having the use case, let's say, fund by the business units and by the business, but still having either some contribution to the foundations, like a tax, or using your transversal budget, which is a platform budget, as a way to do a bit more each and every time toward that goal. So if you think about it, the budget today in most of the teams, they have the budget in a way. It's not about getting it. It's more about how do you make it an efficient use and a value-driven use in a way.
Yeah, I like the term. I just wrote a North Star. You need to have that North Star defined. I think what we've probably done in the past a bit wrong is we define that North Star. We try to sell what that North Star is all in one go to the business.
Exactly.
You need this. No, what you actually need is a couple of moonshots that will then enable you to have that North Star capability. And I think having that target operating model as well as your target architecture model, just to have those two things.
Totally.
Two things alike.
You need some vision of where you want to go and what it means and so on. But for me, it's always that it's kind of the most schizophrenic things is that you need to have a goal and because it's how you align your teams, and it doesn't mean that you won't change your goals over time or you won't refine and you won't learn on the way and so on. But how do you make sure that you work towards this goal in, again, incremental way, meaning something that delivers value, that allows you to learn, that allows you to fail maybe, or to and so totally. So that's really something that is still to be built a lot.
I think I've thought a lot about this, and I don't think there's any magic answer, but I've had the concept of having a data tax. So you actually put a little bit on the compute that each of them are using, which goes into a fund for help with foundations. I think that's one one approach. I mean, ideally, what you want to do is you want to actually have the businesses know or see how what you can do, and they've given you that trust of okay, here you go. You proved it last time. You said, I gave you this amount of money. You've delivered this. And you evidenced, the value it provided. Here you go. Here's more money. I know when I go to my CFO, if I've asked for 10 grand to make 100 grand and I proved I did it last time, he said, do you want 20?
Yes.
Having that recharge. I think the other thing I popped in, I just wrote in here. Is a CPO role. So we talked about if we do, maybe we've moved across. Maybe it's a CDPO role. Maybe we'll cover this more next week. Is if the data officer, we realise now, they cannot do anything on their own. The product officer, he can't do anything on his own as well. You may have had some other if those two roles were combined with the analytics, title as well into it, and if that that person had oversight of all of the projects, not just the data ones, and they can see the benefit of, right, I know I've got those 3 projects coming along. They all need the same security or foundations or deployment mechanism. Bang, I'm going to get that done, and he's got the sign off to do that. I think that's maybe that's the perfect storm of where you want to get to.
That is, I mean, and one caveat I've seen is that many people who are purely from the software world don't always understand what data takes, and data management and so on. So you still need also to, it's not like always, the good people and bad people. There's a lot of education to make sure that the CPO understands the particularities of managing data and what it takes, and what data quality means and so on. Because when you're purely from the SaaS of software world, you don't necessarily always see that. And I think that's initially why data teams have been created, because you need also to have that kind of discipline, and there are some specific disciplines there. But then that being said, I really believe that those disciplines should be way more embedded within product teams and within that, because it's both, like I could say data teams lack the product culture and all the engineering culture around product, and the product teams lack a lot of the data culture. So that's why you need a cross-cultural team basically to deliver better.
It's a really good point. And again, thinking about my years of doing this, the data teams used to, it was like shadow IT to some degree. You used to work very closely with the business. You didn't have DR. You're annoying the standard IT teams because they had to give you privilege they didn't really want to give you and stuff like that. I think over time we've gone backwards to some degree with regards to we've adopted a lot of the engineering skills, the DevOps became mainstream with data ops. That infrastructure knowledge as well got baked into it. We've gained all these extra bloat of skills needed for that, but we didn't double up on that business, or we lost sight of that business, or maybe the sort of people we brought into the industry now are less, and maybe that's how we're hiring. We're getting people on data science degrees, rather than having a business degree or something like that. So
something that some example I take, which is always very interesting for me, is that everyone is complaining about the fact that it's hard to sell data quality investment, in organization, and somehow it's puzzling, because and I understand, when I had some interviews and people are like, yeah, we have data quality problem, no one cares, it's very bad. But when you just say that, who cares? Because it doesn't make sense. If you don't do the job of articulating those in terms of, yes, if we don't have that, it prevents us to do that and that, or whatever you need to. So, it's all about having people who are really keen about making that connection, understanding of how you can use data in products, how you can use product to deliver. I mean, all that kind of collaboration end to end is something we need to build stronger.
So you just mentioned about data quality, and something that I've seen change or shift, particularly in the past 18 months. Everyone bang on about data quality, and we've got all these tools fixing it in our platform rather than trying to educate you to the shift left. I call it the data quality firewall. Have a form that prevents me putting in this rubbish in the first place. Have some validation that you've got the right date format as it's entered, or a drop down box so people can't put free, whatever it is to stop that. Even decent data types to find in your database. There's so many things that can be done in that sourcing, and it's never had the priorities, and we've just always we get blamed for data quality. Well, we'll fix it here, and it's never got us anywhere.
It's a process. I mean, it's a process change. So that's really interesting that shift left. You need to push that to how do we get data quality in the first hand. So I have a couple of stories that are pretty fun. So one is people try to do it with better forms. Like, for example, you're in the shop, people need to enter the email from the client to then contact them afterwards. But then what happened is that because no one trained the people in the shop on why, what happened is that all the emails in the database were noname@noemail.com or something like that. So it was there, but and it took work to build the incentive for them, saying, why do we need that, and what's your interest in there? Otherwise, people are going if you have humans in the loop, they would walk around the process. So it's really hard to. Sometimes it's hard because you really need to think deep in terms of how do we make it happen.
Yeah. And Ramona, you got there before I was able to finish what I was saying, and that was, I'll put it up.
Oh, sorry.
No. I was going to. She's sharp. She gets quite quickly. It's because Gen AI is now people at the C-suite can understand and easily. Oh, look, it hallucinates. Give me all this rubbish information. Oh, okay, that's because my bad data. Oh, that thing that everyone's been talking about for the past few years. Okay, here's some budget for it now. Whereas before is who's going to put. They want to put something in for a nice shiny project. It's a new modern data stack 2.0. We're putting in. Rather than or as Scott Taylor called it, the latest data potato.
That's a good story, because Gen AI is basically a use. People now have a use case and they directly see the impact, so they know they want to act on the root cause. So you gave them a way to understand. Okay, that you have a direct impact on what it means by the quality, and now you can act upon that.
Yeah, exactly. So something we haven't touched on as well is the whole governance aspect, the G word. Everyone hates they've had a bad reputation in the past, and I've tried to justify. Everyone happy they had to speak. Your data accountants or your data lawyers. They are the data governance. And they're there for a reason. And I think working with them sooner rather than later can prevent pain that may be caused. But I've seen the effect of engaging governance at a later point when you're trying to go live, and it's seen a bit of a blocker. So, but how's obviously with AI coming into the mix as well, how are we navigating all our projects to embed any required compliance that's required?
Governance is always both a bad word and something important, because at the end, if you don't have any for me, something where I'm trying to push sometimes is what I call discipline innovation. It's not because you want to innovate that you don't need some kind of discipline, because no one wants to be in the news with horror stories with what you do with AI or with data leaks and stuff like that first. And so that's probably a big threat. And someone asked me the other day, what's your biggest prediction from 25 on the AI space? And unfortunately, I believe that it will be the year of Gen AI horror stories, because I don't expect huge technology shift on that, but the fact that people are going to fail big at that, a few horror stories will teach a lot to the industry. So I think governance is key, but as always, most of the problem with that is that when it's built purely as a control framework, and as an administrative process, one more administrative layer and so on, then it's boring and it's awful. So again, the question is, how do we make sure that we build governance in a value-driven way, and always putting the risk side in front of the upside, because I always say, if you just think about risk, you won't do anything in your life, because everything's risky. You wake up in the morning, you go and take the bus, you drive, whatever. So you do it because you have value. So you need to be, sometimes governance needs to be much better at articulating the value of what they do and why, and not just thinking about the downside. You know?
Spot on, and I think I was just about to say as well as I think that's another area that needs to be value aware, and I've seen it many times in some large organisations where the secure or the CISO team read policy verbatim and then go through it, and then they stipulate we have to do all these things. The developers go and start implementing it because they have no better knowledge, and until someone looks at it with a bit of a product or a business lens, saying, if I do that, I have nothing to sell to the customer. I can have the best, securest data in the world. That's going to cost me the most amount to ever create and maintain, but it's encrypted up to the max that no one can ever get any value from it. So I think it's the appropriate. I think just enough architecture. It's just enough security. Maybe a little bit more than just enough in some cases, but you need the right balance that enables you still to move as a business, but also to make sure that your business is protected enough and all the shareholders are protected enough that you're not going to get that breach or but the company needs to make money.
Exactly, and sometimes depending on what you apply things to, you can have a different risk adversity, to things. And sometimes I take the example of SpaceX. They have a way to build a rocket where they fail a lot at the beginning, and it's very visible because they crash them and so on, but they learn quickly. But they do that when there is no life at risk. So and so you can do that when you just crashing stuff and it doesn't hurt anything more than your financials. And other times when you play with people, you just can't do that. And
and this is we have a new LinkedIn user, which I can tell you who it is. It's Daniel Simon. Thanks for tuning in. It's you're right. It's to have data governance that carry through the whole data life cycle. They should be there at the beginning, embedded. And I don't think that having them as a separate team. They need to be embedded and what do you call it? Assigned to a project and work within that one. I think
that should be, for me, governance should just be the way you manage your product lifecycle, basically, and that's very much what it's not carry through is that the lifecycle of all the products are governance in effect, and so the question is, what are the minimal control you need to make sure you decide on the right things, you keep your cost, you keep your your expectations, then you have all the requirements to align what the engineers are working on afterwards. What do you expect in terms of quality, in terms of performance, cost, etc.
So and that's I think leads on to one of the ways efficient scaling of a data output. I like to use the term friction as a way to describe where you should focus your efficiency lens. And when I say friction, it's time, complexity, and effort to perform a certain activity. I think the other lens I like to put on it is the frequency of change of that friction. How often is that friction happening? But how do you embed that thinking into your data and AI teams rather than just going and working on the shiny, cool stuff?
Oh, that's two things. I think one big shift is still that product approach is important, because when you do products, you just don't build them the first time. You need to sustain them over time and to make them evolve and so on. So I think that changed a lot of things in the mindset of the teams, because then you're not only building new things, and then you always want to do something shiny, because you need to work with your users ongoing, to evolve things, to improve things, to etc. So I think that's something to deepen that, and to make sure that everyone in the organization understand that when you build something, it's not a one-time effort. It's something that becomes a capability or something you sustain until you decide to discard it or to stop it or whatever. So that's something. And then similarly, you need to have those kind of pre-disciplinary teams and so on to have all those things together. And lastly, once you have that, then you can on top of that, or find a ways to add the innovation or cool things on top. But the team need to understand that whatever cool things they built, they will need to sustain it afterwards. And I mean, for me, that's a huge changer. When you know that you're going to support your stuff afterwards, you're very careful about what you build.
No, it's a really good point, and something that I've seen in the past work very well is, as soon as someone's put on call for the code they've written and they get hold of a call, there's a different level of quality of code that gets produced by them.
Exactly.
Strangely, I don't a coincidence or
I don't know where it comes, but there is a causation there, or at least a correlation.
It's a correlation. We'll have to get some data scientists on this to tell us what we already know, that the second version addresses all the main issues that have been found in one go. So I think John brought up a good point here as well. And he's you know John? He's one of my neighbours when I'm over in London. So we always have discussions or debates over the odd pint around our local pub. But I think people should be taught the principles of product market fit. I think when we were talking earlier about it. But on that note, what else do you think that we need to? And I touched on this a few times with some posts, and I think I was getting a little bit too ranty one time, and I said that we need to teach our engineers, basic accountancy skills, profit and loss, but which I think is valid, but maybe that's probably it's nice to do that, but maybe that's not the right approach. But teaching them product market skills. What are the skills you think? We talked about governance as well, of having a governance mindset. What other sort of like skills do we think we need to help our data departments and data people with?
I think that I like the product umbrella because I think it drives a lot of good practice, and what I hate is so too many people, like always, when you have the data product label, there is too many people trying to do product washing, and they say they call whatever they do product just because they package that, but it's not what it means. Product approach comes with and we discussed that with John a lot. It comes with product management discipline, and this question come. So what does product mean at the end? It means being user centric or client centric, and it means something that has a life cycle and that you need to sustain, and of course, it has to have some kind of value equation in there, so that the cost of sustaining that, building and sustaining, makes sense. And if you just have those foundational stuff, and what it means, then it drives a lot of the behavior of the people afterwards. In terms of now it's not just about building or geeking for the sake of geeking. It's really about I tell a story sometime when I was a student and I did my end of study project, and it was a very great project, really interesting and so on, and quite ambitious for the company I was working with at the time. And one of the people in the jury asked me one question at the time was, "That's great, Nicolas, but why didn't you use XML?" Say, what's your question there? I don't know what you mean.
It's like technology-led one.
It's like, I don't know. It's just because it wasn't fit for the job, and so if I had, so what? So it's like, if you come today and you ask people, oh, okay, it's cool, and you did that with I don't know, Snowflake. Why didn't you use Kafka? I don't
know. I've solved the job. I've solved the requirement. If I can look to optimize it, but the main thing is, let's not go technology first. Let's go with the solution first. And I know John quoted Russell also put a comment on there about so significantly from having business domain expertise, allowing them to get close to the use case. I think that's another.
That comes with that comes with a product approach, because when you're product and you need to build that business domain expertise, or at least work closely with people who have it to make sure that you something I've been working on in my team at YOOI, but in my product teams over the year, is always to make sure, basically I told them something: if you don't understand why you built something, please don't build it. Please just don't, because I know whatever you're going to try to do is going to be a bad idea, because you need to be able to, and if when you explain you what I want, you don't get it, just say it, and then try to imagine something, and that's critical. That's being sure that even if you don't have it, you should be able to make sure that even naively you understand why you're building something.
Yeah, definitely. And we've got one more question. I think this is also from Danielle as well, actually. Or comment, actually, how companies buy software is as complex as integrating it into a complex ecosystem. So, and I think my view on this one is that we lost that architecture functional lens of our organization, and for our data stack or our stacks in general. We always go and name the vendor as part of the solution. Oh, what's your stack? So what's your architecture look like? Oh, I've got Fivetran, Snowflake, Airflow. So what you want to do? Yeah. We've got ingest capability. We've got a orchestration functionality. We have a storage and compute that's provided. We have the ability to deliver that to our end customers via these mechanisms. Delivery paths. We don't ever talk like that. We always talk about the tech stack, and then that goes across the business, and they always want to talk. Oh, hold on, Bob down the golf course. He says he's using Salesforce, not like this, And well, what we need to move across. So move from HubSpot to Salesforce. What? Oh, because Bob's using it. Yeah. And I think if we have a CRM capability that is able to perform campaigns, yada yada yada. Oh, same as Bob. I don't need to go and change these things. So, and I've commented a few times. It's like, obviously, I'm coming from an architecture sort of background, but I used to do the hands-on stuff as well. In fact, I'll still hold my own on SQL with anybody. So, being able to code but not having to, and actually having that architecture lens, I think is is a mindset that's missing a lot out there. I think
I think we touched on it earlier, is that the thing is that the data space forgot or didn't came with a lot of practices from the software engineering world that came to learn how to do that. And so there's one trend, which is we need to bring those best practices and those processes within the data space, as you say, CI/CD, observability, any kind of monitoring afterwards, and architecture, obviously, because if you don't have a good architecture, you don't make that maintainable. So you need those things. When we talk about technical skills, we need to have that culture coming to data teams. And that's key to make it sustainable over time, because as without good architecture there is no good software in a way, or not in the long term.
I just think it's like a bit of a melting pot that we're becoming better by looking to the past, to make ourselves better in the future, innovating for the future. And, there's so much to learn from the data warehousing days that got diluted in the big data world, which then came back for the modern data stack one, but it didn't have quite enough because it had too much of the big data one. And then we got, the engineering mentality and product mentality coming into it. But we haven't all agreed internally on everything. And I think that melting pot of knowledge, I think we're in that next period of evolution, really, of learning from all these different areas to benefit from all this technology that we've got our hands on now. We've got unlimited compute storage, more products than we've ever had in our lives, but we still fail sometimes to deliver what the business needs. So
something you just mentioned that is interesting, because and I talked to that sometime, is that when you think about a typical organization, they have quite a few products internally, but now when you think about data, one challenge, I believe, is that you can quickly add hundreds of additional products to your mix. And then, one sheer problem with data product is the scale of that when you want to adopt that within the organization. And so you need to adopt very disciplined processes and oversight mechanism to make sure you can manage that at scale. Otherwise, it's really hard to scale that.
Yeah, definitely. There's a comment from Lee here as well. A lot of startups that build purely to sell it and make money and not really solve real world problems. I think that happens, but I think it's very hard to sell something unless you're able to at least convince someone it's a real world problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether it is a real world problem or not is another matter.
I'm not sure it's a startup problem, because if you look at any large organization, there is so many people managing to get budget to build things that that solve no problem either. So it's
Yeah.
it happens
So,
in either ways, but it's not necessarily only yeah, startups have also need to convince their investors, or if they sell it, then they convince some clients about it. So, but I think
yeah.
in a way, if you where it has been sometimes hard is that when tech startups manage to convince people within organization that they have like a silver bullet, to solve problem. When you, and yes, it's a bit misleading, but in a way, it's you're misled together in that path, because
Yeah. I've going around the data conferences quite a bit, and mixing in some circles, and I speak to people that they're half the age of me, and I'm maybe a little bit young, and they just secured like a X million funding for something, and I ask them to explain what it is, and they're asking me their advice, and in my mind I go, you don't even have a product or an idea, you've got some money, you're playing around. They have, most of these come from MIT or Harvard, these guys, so I'm sure they'll find some use of it, and maybe they're betting on the person, but it just seems the wrong way around for me. Yourself, we were talking earlier, we've got ideas, we've got credibility, we've been here, done it, but no one's given me like a few £1 million. And just here you go, yeah, go work it out later. We do have to evidence these things, which is the right way of doing it. We need to solve real problems, and
yeah.
whatever cost of whatever we put, it needs to give a 10 times value back to the consumer. But otherwise, yeah, it's just another bit of shelfware they're going to have on their stack.
Yeah, and again, I think it happens. Like a few years ago, I was working with a large company, and they just had spent 20 million euros internally to build a data lake. Like 5 years, 20 million euros, and but after that, 0 use case in production on that platform.
Yeah.
Because they never managed to do anything on that platform. It was so complex, so over bloated, and so on. So they had to get rid of it to build a new one. Which is so. I mean, those things are that's what we need to fight in all direction.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that we build things that and it's not always easy, but it's kind of has to be an obsession.
Yeah. Well, I know from our conversation, I know that's what you're trying to help with your platform, and from what I've seen, you definitely hit the spot on addressing lots of the issues that I've seen in organisations. So we have a few minutes. If anyone gives any more questions, we can ask them. But in the meantime, if anyone wants to find out more about you, your products, where they're going to see what your next conference is, something like that, do you want to share your movements with the audience?
Yeah. I mean, please reach out on LinkedIn if you have any question on that. I think our next event is Big Data Paris.
Okay.
So we were at Big Data London like 2 weeks ago. We'll be in Paris in 2 weeks from now. And I think what we do at YOOI is really to have that kind of platform to do data product management at scale, to build that connection between strategy, business, like you mentioned, strategy, business objectives, your use cases, your transformation plan, and your different capabilities. How do you make sure that what you build connects? And I'm always very passionate to talk about that and to understand how people are trying to solve those problems on their own sometimes. So.
Yeah, we're very big spreadsheets normally, and with not that much success. And what I've seen.
Yeah, sometimes people ask me what's your biggest competition, and usually I say it's Excel and the sweat of consultants.
Yes, yes.
But and there's a lot of consultants sweating a lot. So
we do. We have a last minute question anyway coming up from Ramona. What ratio would you say of a day to product manager should have with regards to biz, product, and tech? What's the magic formula? Oh, tough ones.
That's tough because it's I don't know. I don't think there is a formula here. For me, it all has to start with how much value you expect, and then how big you can invest, and what's the railway on there. I think I have one of our clients in mind where basically they've been able to demonstrate after 18 months that today their data and AI program is 100 million investment a year, so huge investment. But the upside on the business is already 500 million per year. So now if they go to the budget discussion, it's very easy. And that's a good way
Yeah.
to size your team also, because as you said, it's
Yeah.
1.5 ROI. So it's
it
easier to
becomes
get
a
your budget.
no-brainer as it becomes. It's like, yeah.
So,
write you
so
the
I
check.
don't think the ratio is so easier as just making your value case, and then you can if you have more, you will accelerate, and that's how you're going to find the right size for your organization.
So, and I think maybe I'll just play back that question. I think it's maybe what level of skills we think were needed for that, an AI or data product manager. I'll try.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to give the same answer, which is it depends. I'm going to do two consultant one, but I think it depends on what data and what product. It always be the environment. I think what would influence it is I can probably teach a good a certain tech person with a certain mentality. I could probably teach them the product and the business aspects. I could probably teach a product manager the biz aspects easier than maybe a tech one. So I'd probably look to see what of what I have to deliver, what my team need the most from what their deficiency is, and then I'd actually get that ratio based on that for the product manager that's going to lead them.
Oh yes, yeah. Okay, I've looked the question. I see what. Yeah, indeed, it's the product manager role has always been a hard role because it's in the middle of everything. So you have to, that's always a role where you need to find balance, and in every organization you will find people who come from tech, some people who come from business, some people come from being purely product doesn't mean much because you're always sitting in the middle, and trying to get something. So I think it's always people who have some wide scope, but and you need to find business people with a tech interest and some tech people with a business acumen, and help them make the gap, basically. And that's there's no like a perfect or ideal. Yeah.
No, exactly. So I've actually got my act together for once, and I actually have someone scheduled for next week. I'm removed from Mona's question there. So yeah, we've got Carl Winterbottom on next week, discussing the evolution of the CDO role, which we touched on a little bit today, and I've spoken about it a few times in the past of where I think they should report in an organisation to be successful. So next week tune in for that. I think we're getting everything all filled up at the moment, so should be getting ahead of the game and having people all prepared ahead 1 week ahead. You'll find, well, again, we did big data London. You'll find some of my team at the London Snowflake Data Tour, which is I think the 6th or 7th of October. Apart from that, I'm not sure where else I'll be at the moment. But catch me on LinkedIn. You'll see what's going on. We do have the Winter Data Conference. The tickets are on sale, and there's a discount code till the end of next month, I think. So anyone wants to come along to the best data conference in the world, I'll put the link in the chat later. But www.winterdataconference.com. It'll be the 3rd year we've done it. So hopefully see some of you out there. But if not, I'll speak to you all soon. So we'll call that a wrap. Until next week, everyone.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks, everyone.
No, thanks for being on there, Nicolas. Always be a great chat. All right, I'll end the stream.